Hello everybody, it's time for Friday Fromage from the farm. So I'm Kate Johnson from The Art of Cheese. I'm located on Briargate Farm and I'm holding up my book, Tiny Goat, Big Cheese, because we're going to talk about this little goat. In fact, we're going to talk about a lot of goats today, and I'm going to take you down and introduce you to the goats. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that I have a cheese making school on my dairy goat farm. The goats came first, and then I had milk and I started making cheese, and after a while I was making a lot of cheese and people wanted to learn how, so I started teaching cheese making. But today, so every Friday, I bring you Friday Fromage from the farm, and because it's March and we are on baby watch, no, she hasn't had her baby yet, darn, or babies. Usually they have twins. Sometimes 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 1. Anyhow, she has not kidded yet, but we're going to go down and see her at the end of this. So stay tuned for that. I'm also going to introduce you to the original goats of the farm, some of which are not here anymore, some of which are down there. And then I'm going to teach you how to make Chevre today. So if you've been making cheese for a while, Chevre is a really easy cheese, and you probably already know how to make it. But last week I started with ricotta, which is also a very simple cheese. And I just figure I'll progress through these little short demos. They're not a full class, but just a quick little demo for anybody who's watching who maybe hasn't ever made cheese before and you think it's really hard. And I'm going to show you these first few cheeses and you'll be blown away how easy they really are to make. Now, cheeses do get harder, and eventually I will share a little bit about some of those harder cheeses, but these easier ones that I'm starting with are really quick and easy and pretty easy to demonstrate. The other reason I'm doing these demos, if you've been following my social media for a while, is that I'm really trying to get some national publicity. I'd either like to be doing cheese making demos on some of the national shows like the Today Show or Good Morning America or Rachel Ray or The View or what have you. And I also have kind of toyed with the idea of doing a cheese making cooking school, show. You know, we have a million cooking shows, but I have yet to find one that focuses on making cheese. So I just figured I'd put these little demos together. I'm sending them off to people I know people who know people, and maybe at some point we'll get some traction. But I also just thought it would be fun to teach you about goat cheese because it is spring. And when it's spring, there are baby goats. Not quite yet, but soon. So I'm going to turn this around and I'm going to introduce you to the matriarch of our herd. She's no longer with us, so you will see a picture of her, and daughters, granddaughters, and then later I'm going to take you out to meet her great, I can't remember if there's one more great. I think she's great-granddaughter. She's the one that's due to kid tomorrow. So I'm going to take you out to meet her at the end. All right, so let's just turn this around here and we will go do a quick tour of the goats. So up here are some pictures on my classroom wall. And this goofy girl with the flying nun ears was Skittles, our very first goat who we got, oh my goodness, must have been 13 years ago now, because that's her little friend Springer, who was her companion. And we still have Springer, and he's 13 years old. He was just a baby when he came. Well, then Skittles had a couple babies, and this is her first daughter, Milky Way. And so I had milk, and I started making cheese. And then Milky Way had babies. This is one of her babies, and you'll recognize that from the cover of my book. That's Galaxy. Galaxy is still living. She lives, in fact, just down the street at one of my friends' houses. And then Galaxy had a baby named Eclipse, and Eclipse is still in the county, too. She's moved around to a couple of different 4-H homes. Now, these, you might notice, look a little different. Skittles was a Nubian, and then we switched to mini Nubians. So we actually bred Skittles to a Nigerian dwarf. And so that's why these were so little. The goats you'll meet out there in the barnyard today are bigger because we switched to full-size Nubians. Okay, we are going to talk about Chevre now. Chevre, or goat. So you really have to make Chevre with goat milk if you're going to call it Chevre. So the hardest thing about making Chevre is finding goat milk that will work for making Chevre if you don't have goats. I, of course, have an easy solution to that. But you will see 2 brands here. This one is probably the easiest one to find at the grocery store, but you can see there's a big red X on it, and that's to remind you, don't buy this one. Do you see here? It's ultra pasteurized. That will not turn into very good cheese, if even any cheese. This brand, on the other hand, is also sold nationally. Trader Joe's and Sprouts carries this brand, Summerhill Goat Dairy. Very nice, folks. And you can see here it just says pasteurized, not ultra pasteurized. That's the key. You cannot make cheese with ultra pasteurized milk. And then, like so many cheeses, Chevre just has 4 ingredients: milk, culture, rennet, and salt. So if you want to deep dive into those ingredients, you can go to my YouTube channel, to the Cheesemaking 101 class, and we'll explain a little bit more about those. But I would say most cheeses, many cheeses at any rate, use this culture, mesophilic. There are a lot of different strains of mesophilic, but this is probably the most commonly used culture, and it's the one we're going to use in Chevre. And then rennet is an enzyme that we also use in most cheeses. Not all. You might remember last week, if you were watching and I was making ricotta, we just used milk and vinegar. So that was called direct acidification. This one is a cultured cheese. And then our last ingredient, salt. All right, so just 4 ingredients, super simple. And now I'm going to show you just how simple. I do have to confess, I didn't quite get this started early enough today, so it hasn't quite gotten to the point I wanted it to, but I'm running with it, and I'll explain to you how it would be better. So in terms of equipment, you don't need much to make a soft cheese. You can see almost everything here you probably have in your house, you know, a colander, maybe some cheesecloth. This is butter muslin, real fine woven cheesecloth, but everything else you probably have. It is nice to have a thermometer, but for Chevre, if you didn't have a thermometer, just warm up your milk to room temperature. Once it feels like the room, it's fine. It's not that picky about temperature. Some cheeses need more specifics on temperature. This is a little digital thermometer that would work fine. And then this is actually a frothing thermometer for making cappuccinos. Those work great. All right, so I'm going to tell you the first step because I did it this morning. All I did was I took a little bit of milk. I actually had just a little bit of my own milk because I have one goat that's still sort of hanging on and is in milk just a little bit. We milk her once every 4 or 5 days. I heated it up just to room temperature, and then I put a little bit of this mesophilic culture, okay? And I just left it in there. I just sprinkled it in, put it in the milk, left it for a couple hours. Then I came back and added just a drop of rennet. All right, rennet is the enzyme that's going to coagulate the milk. And then I just went away and did my business today. Now, let me tell you, I should have started this at about 5 o'clock this morning. I was not up at 5 o'clock this morning, and I forgot about it until about 10 o'clock. So it's about 5 hours shy of where it should be, because it really should sit for about 12 hours. And so when I came back at this 12 hours, I can see that that milk is now solid, yes? It's not exactly milk anymore. If I had let this sit a little bit longer, that curd would have shrunk a little bit and pulled away from the side of the pot. And that would have been a little better, but we're going to run with it. All right, so this is a curd. And that just means we've made the milk solid by acidifying it with our culture and then coagulating it with our enzyme. So then we have our little cheesecloth here, and we're just going to scoop some of this curd. You can see it's still really wet. It looks more like yogurt at this stage than it looks like Chevre. And I'm not going to scoop all of this because I have to do this twice. I'm going to do this on Instagram next. But there you go. It works just fine. Now, somebody is asking me here if I like that combination of the culture and the rennet better than the all-in-one culture from New England Cheesemaking Supply. They're really almost exactly the same. New England Cheesemaking Supply carries a culture they call Chevre, and what it is the culture and the rennet put together. So that is a shortcut, and it really turns out quite similarly. But if you have mesophilic culture and rennet, you can make dozens, hundreds of other cheeses. And so that's why I decided to do that demo. But they really turn out pretty similarly. All right, so once we put our curd into our cheesecloth, we're just going to tie the opposite corners of the cheesecloth together, and we're going to make a bag. In fact, these cheeses are often called bag cheeses. and we're going to let it drain. So see how this is pretty wet still, and I would have filled that whole bag with that curd. And then what I like to do is just put it in a big pot like this so that I can let it drip into the pot, and I can put the lid on, especially in the summer when, you know, we live on a farm, we get flies. Plus I have cats in the house, although I now make cheese in this cheese room and the cats aren't allowed in here. And then I'm just going to let that hang and drip for about 12 hours. And then, see, it's kind of like the Martha Stewart version of cooking. Now I've got my drained curd. So what started like that looks like this after about 12 hours. And that's just because I've drained the whey out of the curd. The whey is the leftover moisture. And then I'm not going to take all of this out because, again, I have to do this twice, and this one is the one that's ready. But I'll take a little bit of this out, and you'll see it's nice and thick, right? And we're just going to put that into our bowl, and that's where the salt comes in. So for salt, we just want to use a non-iodized salt. Really, any kind of non-iodized salt will do. And for Chevre, because Chevre is so flavorful, it doesn't need very much salt. I couldn't see what I was doing there, so I probably did put a little too much. But I like to work it in with the fork a little bit just to get the salt in there, but also to move around the more moist parts of the curd and mix it all together. So the salt is there to bring up the flavor a bit. It also does help to act as a preservative because we haven't added any actual preservatives to this. And then your Chevre is done. I have clean hands, so I'm not going to bother with these gloves. But then we can flavor it. So last week I promoted another woman-owned business. That was Gail Salts, which is an herb salt that I love. This is another woman-owned business, and I'm promoting women this month because it's National Women's History Month, I believe. And so this is one I just found out about later. This gal, her name's Kelly, actually, but I think her maiden name was Anissa. She has these salts, or not salts, but all kinds of herb blends. Anissa's Secrets, if you're interested. And this one I just thought was so pretty. This is her Tuscan seasoning. And you can see it's got all kinds of big, chunky, pretty things on it. So what I would do is just put a little bit of this on a plate. Now you could do this with fresh herbs too, but being that it's only March, I don't have any fresh herbs at my disposal quite yet. And then I'm just going to shape this Chevre with very clean hands, or you could use gloves. Shape it into a log. And then I'm going to roll that log in these pretty herbs. Now, I could use other things like cracked black pepper, or I could even make this into a little disc and put jam on it. You know, you can flavor it with whatever you want. One of my favorite things is just honey. And then there you go. You've got this beautiful Chevre that is ready to go. It's so simple. I often say Chevre is the cheese you can actually make while you sleep. Because if you start that pot the night before you go to bed, come down in the morning, you've got cheese. It's got to drain a little bit, but all right. And then I'll show you another picture up here of just another Chevre. This was one, here it is on my wall, that I made. It's just a disc of Chevre, and it's got fresh basil and lemon zest in it, and some pretty edible flowers. I just lost me. Okay, there we are. All right, so that is how simple making Chevre is. And now, as promised, we'll run down and say hi to the goats real quick. All right, so we're going to go out my door here. This is my little classroom door. And you can see that not too far from the classroom, see if I can make this come back a little bit, is the barn. So literally, my cheesemaking school is definitely on the farm. All right, and I got this all zoomed up and I can't unzoom it, so I just won't go quite as close. So there's the majority of the herd there. I have 10 does right now, and 6 of them here are pregnant. The first 3 are due in the next week or so. So over here you can see Miss Salsa. So if you see from the rear end here, you can see she's forming her bag, as we call it. She's got milk in there for her babies. So that's Salsa. I don't know why this won't zoom back out for me. And then this is her little friend, Gypsy. So you can see, yeah, you know your name, don't you? So Gypsy's just a yearling. Salsa is, I believe she's going on 3 years old this year. This is her second time having babies. And Gypsy is actually a half sister of hers. So that's the one. This is her little kidding pen. And so she will be separate from the goats and the other goats. She gets to have her friend until her babies are born. She's officially due tomorrow, so we'll see. Looks like she's getting close. And then over here, oh my goodness, I'm so close to them that I'm not getting a very good picture. But we can see this one in the red collar here is an original daughter of Skittles. And there's another one in a red collar over there who's also a Skittles daughter. There she is. And then the ones, see, I color code them. So the ones then in the purple, here's purple. This is Capella, and she is also going to have a baby soon. She's a granddaughter. And then the blue ones are the great-granddaughters, and the green ones are the great-great-granddaughters. That's how we keep it all straight. And then, of course, I'd be remiss not to say hi to Seeger. Seeger is our guard llama. Where is he? There you go, dude. Hi. So he's here to keep an eye on the goats when they go out to pasture, which right now there's not much pasture out there. As you can see, it's pretty dry. All right, well, that's it, folks. So let me just take this off and I'll turn it around and say goodbye to you. So thank you so much for joining me for Friday Fromage on the farm. And I hope to see you again next week. I'm not sure what I'm going to demonstrate next week. I'm thinking either feta or paneer. So if you have a vote, just let me know, and that will be our demonstration next week. All right, and if you're interested in learning more, please do come to theartofcheese.com. We're teaching hundreds of, 30 or 40 virtual classes. We do have a class tomorrow that I'm teaching that's a cheddar-like cheese. So hopefully you'll come and see us soon. All right, thanks so much. Bye-bye.